Grand Theft Auto's always been a popular series. Popular enough to have people imitating it. There's been the Saints Row series, the True Crime series, Godfather games, Scarface, Driver, the shitty Gangstar games on the iPhone. The Simpsons even did a knockoff at one point. So now we get Sleeping Dogs, which in spirit is a sequel to True Crime. It looks pretty interesting, so let's give it a shot. The main character in these kind of games usually end up being pretty samey, you know, some gangster guy, deals with drugs, steals cars. But in Sleeping Dogs they give a nice twist in that not only are you that, but you're also an undercover cop. So in game you end up being able to score points for being a good cop and for being a good gangster, and you can balance that out and you earn upgrades for doing these things. It's kind of a fun system.
Still a total poke guy.
But hold on, wait a second. Did he just call someone a total punk guy? The gameplay in Sleeping Dogs is really fun. Now, while the basics of movement and stuff isn't really anything to write home about, where the game really shines is in its combat. Like, you really feel like you kick ass when you're playing this game. You can hit any enemy you want in any direction. It feels real smooth. You can counter hits. You can grapple and throw things. And there's environmental attacks you can do, slamming people in the shit, fans, fucking engines. The combat is brutal and it's real fun, and I really like it. There's guns in Sleeping Dogs as well, but it's not nearly as fun as the melee. It's basically cover-based shooting. You can take cover behind objects and shoot at people. You can blind fire. Moving between cover isn't really that easy. You can dive over things, but usually that doesn't work out too well. You can take enemies and use them as human shields, and you can shoot at people. It's a little bland, not gonna lie. While on foot, that is. This is what people do in China, Japan. The game kind of has a light parkour system where you can vault over things with a push of a button. For some reason, the sprint button is the same as the vault button, though, and that's kind of confusing. Like, I like it. The only problem with it is that it's usually only used in pre-scripted, pre-pathed out chases that are part of missions, and you don't really get the use of that much in digging around the city, which is kind of disappointing, because it's fun. And in the end, it's millions of times better than how movement was in Grand Theft Auto 4. You just felt like a drunk guy, like, flailing around on an ice rink in that game. Hey, is someone calling me?
Cousin, let's go bowling.
Much like on foot, the actual basics of driving aren't really fancy. Some of the cars feel really stiff while they're turning, and trying to reverse and then go forward is just a pain in the ass. But once again, where the game shines here is in the advanced techniques. Sleeping Dogs has a built-in, like, side swipe button where you can swipe people to the left or right or in front of you, and at first it feels really weird to have a button dedicated to that because you're used to doing that manual in games. But once you get used to it, you're gonna be doing this constantly from point A to point B because it's just so much fun to knock people off the road. It's something I never knew I needed, but here it is. I want it. Okay, I'm kind of tired of this car now. Do you see that shit? You can do that whenever you fucking want. That's fucking amazing. If you're like me, when you drive a motorcycle in Grand Theft Auto or in Saints Row, you usually end up, like, crashing into, like, a fire hydrant 5 seconds after you get going, flying off of it, losing half your health, and being really fucking pissed off. But in the Sleeping Dogs, they alleviated this problem, because the bikes feel just as heavy as the cars, and you can plow through everything, just like you would in the cars. It's to the point where I actually prefer driving the bikes, because they're just more fun than the cars. Major props to Sleeping Dogs for that, because that's great. Wei Shen, you're a fucking asshole. So like I was saying before, shooting on foot's boring and stupid. But for some reason, when you combine the relatively simple and basic shooting with the incredible driving in the game, it ends up being amazing. Like, there's some slow motion in play here, you can pop people's tires and that'll send their car flying up in the air if they're driving too fast, you know, shooting people off the bikes out of their windows, and you just feel like a badass when you're like doing jumps over the median and over these random ditches while you're shooting at the gangsters, and then you'll end the chase like jumping on the bad guy's car and getting it. I can't decide if like I like the shooting on cars better or if I like the melee better. They're both really fun, and wow. The graphics in the game are great for a modern generation game. Honestly, if you're making a game that also has to have a 360 and PS3 version, you really can't do much better than this and how people are doing right now. So for what it is, it's good. Animations they look great in combat. Only problem is sometimes you get people snapping into place to make the animations look right, but this is a problem that pretty much every game has, so I can't really fault Sleeping Dogs for that. The sounds in-game are all fine. They get the job done, they're not going to blow you away or anything. The soundtrack, however, is forgettable. There's no real songs on the radio stations that you're going to want to sit around and listen to, so for that, I kind of a little disappointed in Sleeping Dogs, as a soundtrack for the radio stations is pretty important in the Grand Theft Auto clone. Despite all the things that Sleeping Dogs did right with the gameplay, there's still problems with it. For some reason, developers still haven't figured out that this kind of shit isn't fun. I don't want to press buttons to pretend I'm unlocking a thing. That's retarded. There's also this serious problem with the AI. Take a look. Did you figure it out? Okay, let me tell you. Everyone drives on the wrong side of the road in this game. It's fucking weird. Like, how do they screw up something so blatant? Wait a sec, what? Okay, wait, they're supposed to drive on the other side of the road. The mini-games and diversions in this game are also pretty lame compared to Grand Theft Auto and Saints Row. For the good stuff, you can go around busting drug deals, setting up cameras to catch criminals doing it in the act. There's races, which is pretty much mandatory for any Grand Theft Auto clone. You can do favors for people, which end up being random little quests. There's street fighting tournaments, which, you know, you get to do some melee combat, so that's fine. But then there's also stuff like cockfighting, which ends up just being you putting money on a chicken and watching. And I know that's what cockfighting is, but in a video game you'd think, you know, they could, I don't know, let me control the chicken or something. What the fuck? Lastly, there's no multiplayer in Sleeping Dogs, which is a big disappointment. It would have been so much fun to drive around with a bunch of assholes, jumping on each other's cars, ramming each other off the road, singing I fought the law, but they didn't do it. Missed opportunity, guys. Alright gamers, put on your 3D glasses and cancel your Xbox Live prescription. It's time to talk about the PC port of the game! Unfortunately, the PC port of the game is kind of a mixed bag. Performance-wise, it's great. I was able to run the game and record it on a modern machine, no problem. I'm impressed about its performance. On top of this, it also has a free DLC for PC users that gives it high-res textures. And these actually look pretty good. It's really impressive how much better the game can look with proper PC resolution textures. So for these two features, the PC port gets props. As for the bad, the menus in the game give off the illusion of being mouse-friendly, but when you actually go in and try to do things in it, you'll quickly realize that it doesn't work and that you have to switch to the buttons on your keyboard to do anything. By the way, do you see an FOV option here? Well, that's because there is none. Personally, I find it completely unacceptable for a PC game to not have an FOV option, but since this is a third-person game and not a first-person game, the low FOV doesn't make me as sick, so it's not the worst thing in the world. Controls in the game are less than optimal as well. A lot of things in the game are mapped to the same button, and while you can remap the controls properly like a PC game, you can't remap these single button actions to different keyboard buttons, which is kinda disappointing. Steering with just a keyboard also doesn't smooth out as well as it should. The game also has some major auto-aim lock-on going on with the gunplay, which I haven't figured out how to turn off. So overall, for playing the game, I suggest you use a 360 controller. Despite its flaws, Sleeping Dogs still manages to be a pretty solid game. So if you like Grand Theft Auto clones, but you want something more fun, a lot more fun than Grand Theft Auto 4, but not anywhere near as crazy as Saints Row, I suggest you pick this one up. I think you'll enjoy it.